morning to everyone. Students, welcome to the online class of SST. Today we are going to start with a very interesting topic of your history. The name of the topic is the Delhi Sultans, and I am your SST teacher Saloni Sharma. So let's begin with the topic, the Delhi Sultans. As you can see in your book also, let us start. Okay, Delhi. The transformation of Delhi into a capital that controlled vast area of the subcontinent started with the foundation of Delhi Sultanate in the beginning of the 13th century. Now, the Delhi Sultans built many cities in the area that were now known as Delhi, like Siri, Jahanpana, etc. The rulers of Delhi. Delhi was under the control of a lot of the rulers. We can see, first of all, it was under the Rajput dynasty, like Tomara's rulers were there. Thereafter, Anandpala was there. After Anandpala, his relatives Chauhanas were there. Last rulers of the Rajput dynasty was the King Prithviraj Chauhan, who was defeated by Muhammad Ghori in the Battle of the Rhine in 1192 AD, and after that the new dynasties were coming and emerged there, and the first ruler of slave dynasty was Qutbuddin Aibak. After that, Samsuddin Iltutmish was there, then his daughter Razia Sultan, then Ghiyasuddin Balban was there, who was the ruler of slave dynasty. After slave dynasty, the Khilji dynasty was there. The first ruler was Jalaluddin Khilji, and who was succeeded by his nephew Alauddin Khilji. Alauddin Khilji was defeated by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, and after that Tughlaq dynasty came in, emerged. Here Muhammad Tughlaq, Firoz Shah Tughlaq, etc. were there. Then Sayyid dynasty. Sayyid dynasty was started with and ended with Khizr Khan. Then Lodi dynasty was here. So the first ruler was Bahlul Lodi. Now let's talk about finding out about the Delhi Sultanate. Students, we know about the Delhi Sultanate because of its architecture, inscriptions, coins, and Tariq. That means historians written in Persian, the official language of the Delhi Sultanate. Tariq means dates. The authors of the Tariq were learned men. They are administrators, poets, courtiers, etc., who wrote about things and events in Delhi Sultanate, and they mostly wrote very nice things so that they could get rewards from the sultans. They also advised rulers on just governance, equality for all, and on the principles of the birthright and gender distinction. In 1236, Sultan Iltutmish's daughter, whose name was Razia Sultan, became the Sultana because she was more able and qualified than her other brothers. But she was removed from the throne in 1240 because the nobles don't want that a female will ruling them. Now let's talk about Tariq. Tariq means, its scribes were called Tariq, means singular, and plural it is called as Tariq, which means during this period, dates. Origin of the term, it's an Arabic word meaning history or historiography. Language, it is in Persian language, and it was the language of the administrator of the Delhi Sultans or Delhi Sultanate. Authors. The authors of Tariq were learned men, as I told you before that also. Life of authors, those people who lived in the cities and wrote histories of the sultans. And they find, they want, and they are having a lot of the rich rewards in return. Advice. The recounted events and advised rulers on governance emphasize the significance of just rule, the need to prevent an ideal social order. Viewpoints. According to them, an ideal social order was based on birthright and gender distinctions. Now, 4 stages in making of a manuscript. As in your book on page number 32 also showing that manuscripts and inscriptions are there. Okay. Manuscripts have been making with the 4 stages. First of all, preparing of the paper is going on, then writing the text on that, melting gold to highlight important words and passages, and then preparing the binding of that so that it could be able for the reading. Now let's talk about Garrison Town and Empire, the expansion of the Delhi Sultanate. Students, in the early 13th century, the control of the Delhi Sultanate really went beyond heavily fortified towns, and which are called as the garrison towns. Garrison towns means the area, the fortified settlement which is in the hands of the soldiers. The sultans seldom control the hinterland, means the land which is going for the city or the part that supply it with goods and services. Controlling Garrison Town is a distant Bengal and Sindh from the Delhi was extremely difficult because a lot of the rebellions, wars, bad weather, etc. is there. Delhi's authority was also challenged by Mongols' invasion from Afghanistan because they are time to time they are going to invade it over there, and because of that sultans are going to be weak. The Sultanate barely survived these challenges. Its expansion occurs during the reign of Ghiyasuddin Balban, Alauddin Khalji, Muhammad Tughlaq, etc. So, the first setup of campaign along the internal frontiers for the Sultanate aimed to consolidating the hinterlands of the garrison town. During these campaigns, forests were cleaned over there. Okay, and a lot of the new fortresses and towns were established to protect trade route and to promote regional trades here. Now look, one of the map is given to you. By the end of Muhammad Tughlaq reign, after somewhat humble beginnings, the armies of the Delhi Sultanate has marched across a large part of the subcontinent. They had defeated rival armies, seized cities, and a lot of the campaignings were also there. The arrows which are in the pink color are showing to you a lot of the campaigning during the time of the Muhammad Tughlaq here. Now let's talk about Quwwat-ul-Islam Masjid or Mosque. It is to the northeast of the Qutub Minar, and it was built by Qutbuddin Aibak in 1198. It is the earliest extant masjid or mosque built by the Delhi Sultans. Now, a lot of the other masjids were also built by the Delhi Sultans in the city all over the subcontinent. Some are given to you like Quwwat-ul-Islam Masjid, thereafter Moti Masjid, thereafter Jamali Kamali Masjid, or like Quwwat-ul-Islam was built by Qutbuddin Aibak, Then a lot of the masjids were built by Muhammad Tughlaq. Then Moti Masjid were built by Sikandar Lodi and his ministers. Now let's talk about administration and under the Delhi Sultanate. A lot of the time to time sultans were changed. So whenever the sultans were changed, of course, the capability, the style of the sultanate is also going to be changed. So let's understand certain terms. First of all, the important terms are which are related to your book are here. These are bandagan. Bandagan means slaves purchased for military services by Delhi sultans. Students, what was happened? In the previous times, slaves were purchased. They are going to purchased by the military services by the Delhi sultans. Now let's talk about Iqta. Khaljis and Tughlaq appointed military commanders as governors of territory of a lot of the sizes. These lands were called as Iqtas. These are given to the soldiers and to the higher commanders to just take the taxes from there. Then Mukti Iqtadar, Mukti or Iqtadar. The holders of the Iqta were called as Muktis or Iqtadar. A lot of the travelers also given their travelogue. One of the traveler whose name was Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta, a 14th century traveler, he came here from Morocco, South Africa, explained a lot of the things here about the chieftains. He wrote that fortified themselves in mountains, in rocky, uneven and rugged places as well as in the bamboo groves. In India, the bamboo is not hollow, it is big. Its several parts are so intertwined that even fire cannot affect them. He also wrote that the bamboo in India are big, so intertwined and even fire cannot affect them. The chieftains lived inside these and they had their cattle and crops also inside these. Water was also available for them in the form of collective rainwater. Hence, it was very tough to subdue them except by strong armies who cut these bamboos or entering these forests. So as these accounts of the travelers also help us to get the idea about the different rulers. Now let's talk about Alauddin Khalji, differentiation actually, about the reign of Alauddin Khalji and Muhammad Tughlaq. Students, Delhi was attacked twice in the time of Alauddin Khalji. Alauddin Khalji always raised a standing army, whereas Muhammad Tughlaq time, the Sultanate was attacked in early years of the Muhammad Tughlaq. Mongols army who came from Mongolia was defeated. Muhammad Tughlaq was confined about the strength of his army. Alauddin Khalji constructed a new garrison town, whereas Muhammad Tughlaq has not going to construct a new garrison town, but he just do one thing, that the oldest of the four cities of the Delhi was inhabited and of its residents, and the soldiers garrisoned there. The soldiers had to be fed in Alauddin Khalji time, and they are going to collect the taxes from Ganga and Yamuna Doab. Whereas here in the time of Muhammad Tughlaq, produce from the same area was collected as the tax to give it to the army. In the time of Alauddin Khalji, the soldiers have to pay salaries which are called as ikkas, whereas Muhammad Tughlaq also paid his soldiers cash salary, which is known as token currency. Alauddin Khalji administrative measures were quite successful than the Muhammad Tughlaq, because Muhammad Tughlaq administrative was failure, because his campaign into Kashmir was a disaster. Even that his shifting to the people to the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad was a very big blow here. Then again he took the entire capital from Daulatabad to Delhi, which is also not so good decision. Now let's start about functions of the muftis. As I told you about the muftis or iqtadar who are going to collect the taxes here. They are going to lead military campaign, maintain law and order in their iqtas, and of course they are going to collect the revenue or the tax from their iqtas and paid salary to the soldiers from these revenues. Now steps taken to ensure the muftis performs about their duties. That the muftis, whatever the duties is assigned to these iqtadar, are doing good or not. So their office were all not made hereditary. Hereditary means it is not passing from father to son. They were assigned iqtas, the lands as salaries for a short period, and after them they are going to be transferred. Accountants were also appointed to check that whatever the amount they are collected is given to the royal treasury or not. Then care was taken that the muftis collect only the taxes prescribed by the state, which is prescribed by the sultan to them, and they are not going to collect it by their own self. And this also kept the required numbers of the soldiers. Now, how did the sultans control and consolidate such a vast kingdom? The kingdom, to control the kingdom is not so easy for the sultans. So what they did? The consolidation and control of the vast kingdoms needs a very good administrator. The early Delhi sultans trained special slaves called as the bandagan in Persian, who were purchased for military services. They were trained to hold important political offices. Military commanders were appointed as governors of the territory of varying sizes called iqtas. Holders of iqtas were called iqtadar or muftis. They were responsible for leading military campaigns, maintaining law and order in iqtas, and for collecting revenue in lieu of their duties services. There were some accountants also appointed by the states to check the amount of revenue collected by muftis. Under Alauddin Khalji, the state brought the assessment and collection of the land revenue under its control. Now, who ruled Delhi after Khiljis and Tughlaqs? After the reign of Khilji and Tughlaqs, who were there? These were Sayyid dynasty and Lodi dynasty. Ibrahim Lodi was defeated by Babur in the very famous warfare of Panipat in 1526, and after that Mughal dynasty was started, for which you are going to learn in the next chapter. Mughal dynasty was started with Babur from 1526 to 1530. Then Humayun. Thereafter Sher Shah Suri came here in exist. The Sur Empire was there. Sher Shah Suri from 1540 to 1545. Then again came here the reign of Humayun, then Akbar, and Mughal dynasty was emerged here. I hope you liked the video and understood the chapter well. Thank you. Stay safe, stay home, and have a wonderful day.